Welcome back to Rev It Up Bowling. My name is Jason Robarge, and today we got a video analysis for you. I had the pleasure of working with Mike Jasnau. Now, some of you might know who Mike is. If you don't, definitely look him up. Mike is a USBC certified coach. He works with a lot of PBA bowlers, and he's a PBA champion himself. Luckily, here in Alaska, he comes up because he's a great guy for a couple weeks and does a bunch of lessons. Now, for someone like me living in Alaska, it's hard for me to get out and about and do things like lessons with certified coaches. Mike, I've been working with him for 3 years now. A little bit about Mike, he hails out of Utah. He ran lane 81 at the National Bowling Stadium for 20 years or so. He's been at a lot of USBC Opens. He's done over 15,000 video analysis sessions with other bowlers. Along with that, he is a past PBA champion, and he has been accredited in a way with working with some of the best bowlers in the world, including fan favorites like Brad and Kyle. He's worked with, Chris Prather, Marshall Kent. He's worked with a lot of the top tier bowlers, but also a lot of just normal people like me and you. I was very fortunate to get a few lessons from him, and what I wanted to do today was go over with video on what we worked on, the things I need to improve and practice on, and I just wanted to maybe spread some knowledge. And Mike's a great guy. If he's in your town, he travels around a lot, look him up. Definitely encourage getting a lesson from him. He's really, really smart, and he knows the game, not just physically, but more mentally, which we'll get into later. What we're gonna be doing is on form, I'm gonna have some of my pre-lesson shots, and I'll be comparing them to what we worked on. This stuff obviously pertains to me, but if you can take a tidbit out of here, one or two things to help your game, then that'd be great. And I also wanted to, shout out Mike because he does such a good job and he's a really, really nice guy. Without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing I want to go over is what my expectations were. So before the lesson, I felt like I was having problems with, the biggest thing was inconsistencies off my hand. I felt like the ball would sometimes get trapped behind me, and I didn't feel like I was able to get on the ball without overworking it. So there's some things I wanted to have him work there. I knew I have a really bad drift, so my angles can sometimes get wide open. Playing more up the lane is more of a challenge for me, and a lot of it has to do with my drift. And I knew that, but I knew he would touch on it again, and he did. The first thing I want to do is show you guys, what I was doing before and the things that he wants me to work on now. So I've always thought myself as a pretty good bowler. I've worked on my game quite a bit. College helped me that a ton, just bowling all the time. I've definitely put my 10,000 hours in to try to master the sport, but that's why coaching is so important, because we can always get better. I wanted to get dialed in with Mike was, as I mentioned, my angles and getting trapped behind the ball a little bit. He's always told me is I have a very smooth game, but I secretly muscle the ball pretty good. Sometimes it's hard to see, sometimes it's hard for me to see, especially, that big thing is perception versus reality. You might think you're doing one thing and really you're doing something completely opposite. That's why video analysis and more so coaching is really important. Some of the physical changes he had me do. So we're gonna go ahead on here, as you guys will see, and I'm just gonna play this one shot, and I wanted to go over a little bit about what we need to work on first. I'm gonna go ahead and add the side view as well, just to get you guys an idea. So a little bit about my game. Now, like I said, I have a pretty smooth game, but I add a lot of power into it. I do have a high rev rate, and I've worked really hard to get that rev rate. However, efficiency is key, especially to prevent injury and also just bowl longer without using, more energy. To just start out, we can see my game here. Pretty simple, nothing too crazy, pretty decently high backswing, a lot of tilt as far as my upper body goes, and I get on it pretty hard. One of the things that he wanted me to work on specifically would be pertaining to on my first step. One thing Mike really wanted me to work on was on my first step. It's a little too big. He wanted me to cut it down a little bit. If you're a 5-step approach, really your first step is just from momentum taking such a big step like that stops my momentum. It's hard to roll over my foot. So he wanted me to take a little bit shorter first step. Also on that first step, and I mastered this a while ago, really make sure you roll over your foot and not slide, just because that stops your momentum as well. I do that pretty well here, but the big thing he really wants me to work on is that ball movement on that first step. We can see here that when I am all the way set up, my ball is just around hip height right there. And then as I go on my first step, it slowly drops out. What he really wants me to work on is keeping that ball in a more static position through the first step. That way it's easier to get the ball into the swing at a specific point and not have to, slowly lower it down and then, okay, now I'm dropping it. He really wants me to get into that position a little bit better, and I will show you a comparison of what a good one hopefully looks like. So I shot these this morning. I wanted some after video. So we can see on my first step here, it's better. It's not great. It's not staying on that horizontal line for the first time, but it is better than it was before. So there is a little bit of improvement there, which I really like. And also that first step is a little bit shorter. What this will do is help me get into my next step. Now the next step is the probably more important part from what I felt physically. So when I get my ball into the swing, I push away on that first step and half drop it into the swing. The way Mike explained to me, which makes perfect sense, is my ball swing, you can see here, gets pretty high. It gets above my head. So if we're talking about gravity and efficiency, if I'm lowering the ball a little bit and it's below my waist before it actually gets into the swing, well, how is that ball going to naturally get that high without me using muscle? That's the big muscle portion of this video, would be for me in making sure that I don't get it dropped to the swing early and make sure I start it from a little bit higher point. So what Mike wanted me to do was my push away, as we can see here on the second video. He really wants me to keep that ball so we can have my right foot planted about right there. See how it's just right about at my knee, right there. He wants me to have this ball in my left hand a little longer. What that will do is get the ball up a little bit more. When I push the ball away, just be a little bit slower about it, a little bit more conservative. I drop the ball into the swing pretty quick and it goes straight down. That's really hard to catch it and bring it back up through the swing. What he's encouraging me to do, which I did here pretty okay. So right foot's planted. As we can see here in this video, my gap between my knee and the ball is a little bit more. It's about 3/4 of a ball difference, but you can see my left hand has now stayed on the ball a lot later. What this will do is create more of a rounded motion on the swing like that. And that will help transfer energy from a forward, and going backwards into a pendulum motion, instead of just dropping it straight down and then have to pull it back up. This also helps with, I feel like my wrist problems don't necessarily come from me hitting on the ball. I feel like sometimes it's for me having to catch it when I do my push away. So far, what I've done with this has helped me quite a bit. I can actually feel it in my wrist quite a bit, and it helps a lot. Adding a little bit more weight into that left hand during setup just gets that arm nice and loose. So what we're gonna do as well is we can see that now my right foot's down, the ball's up a little higher, and you're like, well, that's gonna throw off your timing a little bit. Yes and no. So since I was dropping it down really quick into the swing and I had to pull it back, that actually slowed down my swing quite a bit because I had to use muscle, and it's not an efficient way to get the ball into the swing. By actually not pausing it, but just having the ball a little higher, not from the start, but when I do my push away, more of a horizontal motion and then get it going downward, that has increased the speed on the way back, but I don't have to do as much, which is the best part about all this. So far, that's helped quite a bit. Those are pretty easy changes from what we found. I did end up doing 2 lessons with Mike. He's only up here once a year, and I can't get out of the state enough to, go get coaching like that. So I went ahead and got 2 lessons. This was part of the first lesson. This was the easy stuff, but it helped me quite a bit. If I was able to put the first, 2 steps together with that push away, that probably felt the best physical change I had. Now, not all physical changes feel good. A lot of the times you're going to get worse before you get better. For me, that was part of my footwork. That was by far the hardest part for me. And I'm gonna show you what I mean here in a second. So the next part is gonna be all connected. They all serve, one purpose, but if I do one thing wrong, they all are correlated. So let's go ahead and I'll show you a back view. So on these 2 videos, let me zoom in a little bit for you guys. All right, on these 2 videos, worked with me a lot on my footwork. So I have a drift left. Now, drifting left or right, few boards, fine. Not too bad, but it also matters on what steps you do drift. Now, I probably drift on some of the worst steps you can. For me, that is my 2nd and my 5th step. By doing that, it does throw everything about my body position off, and over the years, I've just got used to it, but now I do need to get it fixed. So what he had me do, along with, shortening my first step a little bit, what Mike had me do was really make sure I did not cross over as much on my 2nd step. So if we can look on the right, this is my old video. Yeah, right about there. This is my old video. So we can see, if you look at the gap between my legs right here, right there isn't much of one. My crossover step, which really shouldn't be crossing over, really should be walking straight, it goes way too far to the left. Right there, to account for my drift, I drifted 7, 8 boards before, maybe even sometimes a little bit more. That foot is on 14, and now that foot is on 22. So I immediately just went, I'm gonna start out with a 6 board left drift. What that does also is it shifts my entire body over a little bit, and I have to now walk around that foot with my 3rd step. That just adds a clunkiness a little bit to the game. The big portion with this is, if you watch my ball, especially when we get later, when I move my entire body left, the ball travels with me. And you'll see that more so on my slide, but the ball has now already moved, 3, 4 boards to the left, and the angles I'm looking at on the approach when I'm standing there are not the same angles I get when I slide. When I get to the foul line, I'm 7 boards left. All my angles have to be, I'm sliding away from my target and having to throw it right. This isn't a good thing when it comes to getting big open angles, like being able to stand left and throw it at the right gutter and just watch it wheel back. I can do that very well. If I was to go up the lane, this makes it tremendously harder. What Mike is having me do is, if you watch the left screen when I put my foot down, now I'm still working on this, it's a work in progress, but I stood on 20, my right foot is probably about 14 still, 15, 16 roughly. And now when my right foot drops, it's about 19, 20. So it is a progress, but it does need to go over a little bit more. Mike explained to me he wants a little bit of a gap between my legs, just as a reference, and that will keep me from taking that hard drift to the left on that 2nd step. So the other step that he wanted me to work on was my slide. I don't drift other than my 2nd and my slide. The slide's probably the worst step to slide left on, and I'll show you why. So on the right screen is a little bit older video, and as you can see, when I start sliding, my left foot is on, 30? And then when I slide, it's going straight to like 33 or so. Now, I will say this isn't as bad of a shot as typical. Usually that's around 4 or 5 boards left. But what that does is, if you watch my swing path, so the ball and everything is right underneath my head. So it's right about there. Now, if we continue the video a little bit, it is now dipped in, I mean, a whole 5-6 boards. Just in that one step, the ball caves into my inside a lot. And that's how I get a lot of power too. You know, getting your elbow inside and keeping the ball a little bit closer to your body, getting your hand inside the ball and behind it helps a lot with power. But for me, I'm working really hard to get there. One of the things Mike wants me to do is cut down that drift on the last step in order to prevent a little bit of that left to right movement in my downswing. So if you watch the video on the left, this should be pretty okay. But you can see here, you know, my left foot is on 22. And then when I slide, it's about 23, 24. So it's better, but if you watch the swing when it comes down, see how it just doesn't dip down as much. It still does it. It's still a work in progress. Have not mastered it. Just did this 2 weeks ago. So I'm still working on it quite a bit, but you can already see improvement there. You can see with my right foot, it is now a little bit more out of the way of my left foot to come through. Those have been pretty good improvements so far. That's by far the hardest thing I've done. I mean, by far, is trying to make sure I do not drift left. One thing that has helped me tremendously with this and will help me in the future once I get used to it is my angles. So since I'm not drifting 7 boards left, I'm not literally walking away from my target. For me, I was so used to being like, okay, I know I'm gonna end up here, like left of where I start. So when I draw my angles, you know, they look normal to me, but they won't be normal until I get actually to the approach or to the foul line. It's just a difference in perspective. You know, while you're looking at 2 different angles, it's harder to, you know, hit that perfect one. So this should help with my accuracy and my overall angles through the heads and through the pocket quite a bit. The big thing for me is playing up the lane. I've noticed that it's a lot easier for me to get the ball going forward and up through the heads, through the fronts of the lanes in a straighter motion. I don't have as much loop, so much belly in the ball motion anymore. And I can still do it if I want to get those open angles. I just feel like I'm not fighting always open angles at the moment, which is really good. So as we can see on the left screen, you know, that slide left is just so much better. If you guys watch guys like Kyle Sherman, Marshall Kent, their footwork is phenomenal. One of the things like with those guys is they've been, you know, they're pure athletes too, but that's the difference between me and those top pros is little stuff like this, and their footwork is truly amazing. The drift left by far is gonna be the hardest thing for me, so I'll be working on that quite a bit, and I'm gonna also explain to you guys how I'll be working on this stuff after we finish the analysis. So we're gonna be talking about my backswing height and how it is correlated to my 4-step. One of the big things Mike really wanted me to work on was my backswing height and 4-step. The 4-step, if my backswing gets too high, that adds time, right? So if my backswing stopped, let's just say take this video right here, for example. So my backswing has now stopped right about there, about even with my head, just thereabouts. This is the older video. And I felt like I was actually throwing it pretty good, but as we can see right here, it's just a little bit higher than my head. So he wanted me to lower my backswing. And by doing that, he also wanted me to shorten my 4-step. When we shorten my 4-step, what happens is my backswing naturally has to be a little lower because you're taking that amount of time out of it. By shortening your 4-step, it's so much easier to roll over that foot and get power into the approach. If you have too big of a 4-step, what happens, or your power step, is you lunge out a little bit and it's harder to transfer that energy. The bigger that step, the less distance you have between your 4-step and your slide. What Mike really wanted me to do is, if you see this splice right here, he really wants that toe to even be back further, probably about another 6 inches or so. But it's not by just starting further back. It's by shortening that fourth step. So what I've been doing is using this splice as an example. Now right here, we can see that I'm in the same position I was. I am trying to concentrate on it, but sometimes it is a little difficult. But in the video on the right, I do see improvement. The ball is a little lower in the backswing. And what that's been doing is it doesn't get as high. So if I'm lowering it by 3/4 of a ball, well, that's 3/4 of a ball on the way up and on the way down. That adds a lot of time. If I can shorten that fourth step up, I feel like I can transfer energy more efficiently. And what I've noticed is my speed, my rev rate has all stayed the same. If anything, I think my speed's up a little bit, but I'm working significantly less. And that is simply by not having to catch the ball on the way down. And also I mentioned some of the problems I was having was I felt like in my backswing, I had to be really quick out of it, or I feel like I get trapped behind my butt a little bit. And that has to do with my backswing getting a little too high, and I don't have enough time between my power step and my finish. Now, as you can see here, I always foul sometimes. That is correlated a little bit. He wants this step to be a little bit shorter, maybe cut it down to about right here or so. This step isn't as bad. We can see probably about the same. I wish I could say it's better, but I'm still working on it. This was just 2 weeks ago, but it has felt better in general. So I need to shorten that fourth step, lower that backswing a little bit. What he described it as like parasitic motion, you know, it's not really doing anything. It's not really helping my overall game. And if anything, it's siphoning some energy because I'm having to work a little harder and I can't transfer that energy from myself into that bowling ball. So overall, that's what he had me work on. Just to go over this a little bit more, just to start it over and to give you guys a reminder, you know, on that first step, he really wants me to hold that ball a little bit. Damn, Jason, go bowl. There we go. He wants me to keep that ball static. As you can see here, it's pretty static. It's really not moving a whole lot. Shorten that first step up just a teensy bit. On the second step, make sure it stays in my hand a little bit longer. So we can see here that ball is, you know, half a ball length or so, more above my knee, more towards the hip length. Really what he wants me to have is probably that ball to be the bottom of it, probably be about right there on my second step. So I still have some more room for improvement there. Again, that will just help me get the ball dropped into the swing a little bit easier, a little more rounded shape, started from a higher position to let the ball swing into where it needs to go instead of pulling back on it, which I have a tendency of doing. And then as far as the drift goes, well, I'll show you that on another one here. Let me do this, go boop, and then remove and compare. Go and behind, bam, bam. So as far as footwork goes, he really wants that second step, as you can see right here, right there. Oh, it's not working. Come here, right there. To be not so far to the right, definitely less of a crossover step, wants a little bit more of a gap between my legs here. It's in work in progress, it's not great. It probably needs to be about two boards, maybe 3 boards further to the right, but we're getting there. Also on my fourth step right here, little bit smaller, also get that swing a little bit lower. I'd say here I probably need it to be about head height or so. Marshall Kent has all the power in the world and he doesn't have a terribly high backswing. He just can transfer energy so well. He's also really lanky, so that helps a lot. But get that arm swing down a little bit more. And then as far as my final step goes, really make sure that I slide pretty forward and not to the left. This shot was 3 boards of total drift. So I've cut it down from 7, 8. You know, from the positive outlook, I'm already improved by 60%. Woohoo. One of the things he mentioned about the drift just to help me would be stand further left than you're thinking you need to and feel like you're walking towards your target or right. And for me, it feels like I'm walking all the way to the lanes on the right side, but really I'm still drifting a few boards to the left. It's that perception versus reality. And again, that's why these video analyses are so important. Outside of that, that's really what he had me work on. So far, I've seen, you know, some improvement. You know, you got to get worse before you get better, get used to those characteristics, those patterns that you understand with your day-to-day game. when you change stuff, your feeling will go away, and you got to get that feeling back, that touch. Other than that, Mike talked to me a little bit more about the mental game of bowling. For me, and I'm sure plenty other people, the hardest part about this game is by far the mental portion. I can throw the ball pretty dang good all the time, but making sure that you're understanding equipment, surface changing, moves on the lanes, all that sort of stuff's important, but also just making sure you have a free head space that isn't cluttered up with day-to-day crap and you can just focus on bowling. That's by far my hardest challenge in bowling, is just making sure I don't get down on myself too much, give myself a break once in a while, and then really enjoy the little things. If you trip out a 10 pin, great. Ball motion's not the greatest, hey, still a win. And attack the game a little bit more like that. And over the past couple of years, that's helped my game just quite a bit, enjoy bowling a little bit more. When we go on YouTube and we're looking for the guys or girls who throw the best looking bowling ball, right? That's a small percentage of the sport, 25%. The rest of it is mental. We're doing a swing analysis right now, but again, the most important thing is to make sure you come, when you bowl, make sure you're happy, and where bowling isn't as much of a job or a trigger to you, that's going to help you so much more than any physical work we do on the lanes or off the lanes. Just making sure your mind is prepped, good headspace, but also understand the game from the equipment, surfaces, moves, level, all that stuff comes into play. That is definitely important. If you guys got any tidbits from this is again geared to my game. But Mike's a phenomenal coach, and with his blessing, we were able to make this video. Obviously, shout him out. Make sure you guys go see him. Hopefully, he gets more business and all that stuff from this. But that man really just enjoys spreading knowledge, and so do I. So with his blessing, he was able to let you dive into the brain of the master for at least a second. But that guy is really good. He's really nice, and if you guys ever want to work with him, hit him up on Facebook and see where he's at. He travels around the country 10, 11 months out of the year. Probably, yeah, quite a bit. He might be in your neighborhood. A lot of the stuff he does is on the West Coast, but if you guys have any questions, you can always reach out to him. We are going to have more tournament videos, of course, our ball review videos. You guys mentioned in the past, doing drilling videos, all that stuff. We're definitely going to work on that. We're in full-fledged league season at the moment and owning a pro shop. I'm sure some of you know it is definitely not a walk in the park. A lot of plug work, a lot of other stuff. So we'll be definitely trying to put out, 10 to 15 maybe videos a month just to keep the ball rolling, keep you guys engaged, and just loving the sport that, I do for a living. So with that said, if you guys like this video and want more of this content, please smash that like button, leave a comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. We're on our road to 10,000. We really, really want to get there just because it'd be fun to. It's a goal of ours, and whatever content you guys enjoy watching, we definitely appreciate you guys watching our content. So with that said, this was Rev It Up Bowling. My name is Jason Robarsh. Much love. Peace.